ladies and gentlemen, on this, the first post-Shield rewatch Spoilerin time. We will finish by talking about Season 1 of Star Wars Rebels. We will talk about episodes 1 through 4, plus the behind-the-scenes episode of With Bob and David, and Fargo, episode 5 of Season 2. But me being Tom Merritt, I feel it is incumbent upon me to tell Brian Brushwood that we have an amazing guest today.
Oh, man, the only thing more amazing than you and me talking about shows we watch is if we were to involve one of the fantastic producers that help make this show possible. Maybe somebody who hosts a podcast all about The Walking Dead. Luckily, there's nobody like that, so unfortunately, it's just you and me.
Wait, hold on. What if there was somebody who did that and also had hosted a show about House of Cards and also booked the guests? Then we could ask Jackie Hearn to join us.
What? Ladies and gentlemen, the fantabulous Jackie Hearn of Chat Realm fame. How are you, Jackie?
Well, when you said awesome, I kept looking around.
Oh,
Stop.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. An honor to be here to talk about Mr. Show.
Yeah.
Now, we're going to talk about the movie draft in just a second here. But this ain't no show, mister. This is With Bob and David, all right?
Absolutely. But before we do any of that, do you want to start with Triage or shall we start with
No, we start with the movie draft.
Let's go with the movie draft.
Try to take my moment away from me.
Sorry.
I'm number one.
Ah, as you are and forever will be. Thanks to the broad, muscular shoulders of Spectre and the Peanuts movie, you're sitting pretty
the
at
Brushwood family kindly helped out with. Thank you so much.
Yeah, $312 million, looking good, and you still you got a lot more gas in the tank on those, I think.
Yeah, a little bit. Probably from both of them. We'll get some more. Here's the thing. This is lovely. I'm going to enjoy the view up here. It'll be great position to be in when Christy Cates and the Hunger Games Mockingjay Part 2 just cruise past me and Malango. And then we'll all sit around waiting to watch Brian go past later on in the month.
I don't know. In fact, before we do have a letter about that. I know it's technically a triage thing, but
I didn't say you'd cast Christy or not. Brian.
Oh,
that's what the letter is saying. I don't think I have enough in the tank to make it all the way to the top. What I've got left in the movie draft is The Night Before, Seth Rogen, it's not bad, and Sisters, which is not going to make me tons of money, and Daddy's Home. That will not be enough to catch either or you and Christy. But yeah, that we have someone named Jeremy who is very convinced that the seasonal difference of having Star Wars The Force Awakens come out in the winter when the habits of going to movies are different and the competition is different will prevent Star Wars from making enough money, not only for Brian to win, but for it to even surpass Jurassic World.
Yeah, well, Jurassic World was the highest grossing movie of this year, and I think we all expected Star Wars to surpass it. He's saying that's not true. He actually said it might not even surpass The Phantom Menace, which is currently the highest box office gross of any Star Wars movie. And if that's the case, then me only taking home 75% of it, I don't have a prayer against everyone else because it would be around, 400 million or less.
Yeah, I don't think he expects it, but he did say if Star Wars failed to exceed The Phantom Menace, 75% of less than $400 million would be a huge disappointment.
Yeah. We'll see. Star Wars fever, I think, is a real thing. I think my doctor diagnosed me with it, and I'm taking lots of Star Wars Rebels to satiate it.
Well, it's a good thing we're into our triage segment where we talk about emails from people, and we got one more here. Josh Johnson said, just wanted to make a comment about Fargo. You talked about how you thought the show would go back to the season 1 characters next season. Fargo was conceived as an anthology show, much like American Horror Story or True Detective. Each season is meant to stand on its own, which also makes me wonder why Brian felt season 1 was incomplete. Seemed to wrap up nicely to me. P.S. If Justified is the next show, you've got to power through season 1. Season 2 is where the fun begins.
Yeah, that's what I've been told about Justified as well. Did you feel like the first season was totally finished, Tom? You feel like, well, that's all I need from that story?
No, I didn't. But I also felt it was complete. Like,
What?
I didn't feel like, oh, crap, I'm beyond pins and needles till next season. It was more like, okay, that's a good season, and I can't wait to get more of this story. But it wasn't like cliffhanger or anything. Like, it felt like a complete season.
Yeah, agreed. Although it sort of ended up kind of where we began with a murder unsolved and a guy a lady who's in a position to solve murders. And it's
Jackie watched it as well. Did you feel the same way?
Yeah, actually, I'm so excited about the new season, and actually, I think that the writers from True Detective really need to take some lessons from the writers of Fargo if they're going to create a new, completely, almost completely different story. But I definitely agree with you, Brian, that it has started out in the same sort of pattern. Um, I'm just really enjoying the characters, the quirky, sort of cynical mannerisms of the people from Fargo, and I don't know when I'll ever get sick of it.
I don't know. To be honest, the Minnesota nice accent's kind of wearing on me just a little bit, or at least the novelty of it. But not that I want people to stop talking in it or that they should set it anywhere else. But yeah, I guess what I feel like is I felt like there was a number of unanswered questions at the end of the first season, all of which I would love very, very much to watch in another arc, right? And that's what many seasons do, is they have a complete story with connective tissue leading you to the next chapter of this amazing story. So in that regard, it seemed to me obvious, like, oh, great, I can't wait to get more connective threads that will give me answers to some of this stuff next season. And instead, they leapt into a totally different situation, which,
Am I wrong here? But isn't this sort of a backstory to the first season?
Well, according to the email, it's intended as an anthology. So the third season will go somewhere.
Well, no, this is a
completely.
backstory to the.
Wait, it is.
So when we eventually get the bigger picture,
no,
should we just be patient?
According to the emailer, no, we won't get any bigger picture. We'll just get more random stuff like that.
I would like to find out from the folks doing the show, because they said next year we're going back to the 70s. We're going to give you a story that is connected to this season but is not, dependent on this season. And I don't know if they've said anything about the third season yet or not.
Yeah, and beyond that, I mean, we're all just speculating wildly. Why don't we talk about what we've actually seen, which is the latest episode of Fargo. Tom, what did you think?
I liked it. I'm in cruising control now. Or I'm in cruising control. I speak English. I am on cruise control now. I am enjoying the show. I like the characters. This gave me more of those characters doing things in the plot lines that I've become accustomed to. And it wasn't until the end that we really got, the big explosive moment, and that was awesome. But even those early, like, on rails parts of this episode, I enjoyed it. I guess the thing that sticks out in my mind the most is that we finally saw serious angry Mike Milligan, who's not got a smile on his face anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, and he's got a head in a bucket, and we also
What's
see
in the box?
Yeah, right. I love the whole dynamic of one of the Gerhardt kids trying to make good. Like, hey man, I want to do the business, and then he's like, all right, here, go do this hit, and he goes in and he can't do it, which was. I
love that girl was reading. What is she reading? Camus?
Yeah. Well, it looked like some kind of depressing Sylvia Plath kind of stuff. I mean,
I think she mentioned it.
Oh yeah.
And I think it was Camus. I know it was a philosopher, and just talking about that. And I'm like, oh, that's Chekhov's philosophical statement. Like, unless you're dead by then. I'm like, oh, he's gonna die. Well, he didn't, but people died. So yeah, that was as foretold.
Yeah, I also liked I liked that whole thread. I liked the fact that it snapped. It was this giant wake up call for our butcher friend, and in the fact that it ends, I'm glad that the police got to him first. I'm glad that it wasn't the Gerhardts. I'm glad that they realized that they're in the crosshairs of something, and I'm glad the good guys got to them first, and maybe they'll talk some sense into them. They can take a couple years of probation and get on with their lives and I love the fact that Tom is shaking his head and smiling patronizingly, like, oh, Brian.
Episode 5. Yeah, that's it. They're fine now. They're under protective custody. Yeah, no, and that's beautiful. It's beautiful that there is that want to feel that way about them. Like, oh, good, okay. Hopefully they're taken care of now. No, they're not.
Did you are you a fan of Bruce Campbell's Ronald Reagan?
It took me a second to actually realize it was Ronald Reagan, and the thing that tipped me off that it was Ronald Reagan was they totally got those eye triangles that he used to get, like, down.
Oh, wow.
Like, oh, that's obviously Reagan. I noticed that real quick. But that is the one thing that took me out of this episode, was having a real recognizable historical figure also played by a real recognizable cult movie. One or the other, but not both, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
I don't know how I feel about Ronald Reagan appearing in the show. It just seems so odd.
Well, and
it doesn't seem necessary. You could have some nameless governor and still have the same plot line.
This is my objection. Going back to the very first episode, there was a lot of unnecessary weirdness for weirdness' sake. There's no reason you needed UFOs to appear randomly and then go away. There was no need that your opening scene had to involve everyone waiting on Ronald Reagan to take a leak before showing up for his scene in a 1940s shoot.
Well, I disagree with you about the first episode, but I'm with you in as much as like making it Ronald Reagan just seemed weird in this episode, seemed unnecessary. Like having him be protecting a political character and like on the border, like you could just do that. You wouldn't have to make it someone that is not only a presidential candidate in the 1976 race, or 79, I guess, but also the one who becomes an iconic president of the United States, right? Like,
yeah.
It's just too recognizable.
I agree. And with no significant payoff as of yet. And so, and it's not like, whereas like Narcos, obviously that's integral to the story. So it makes sense to cut over to archival footage of Ronald Reagan saying X, Y, or Z.
But I mean, I was not against Bruce Campbell being in it.
Just not him as Ronald Reagan.
Yeah, exactly. I was actually trying to find the name of the girl in the butcher shop, because I thought she just did such a great job.
The actress, you mean?
Yeah. Emily Hain is the actress. Noreen Vanderspice.
Vanderspice is her character's name?
I love that character.
That's amazing.
That character is so good.
I love
perfect.
Jesse Phelps. Is it Phelmans? The guy
Plemons?
who's in Friday Night Lights. And,
Meth Damon, yeah.
Yeah, and Todd from Breaking Bad. He just does that character so well. He is stuck in that role for the rest of his life. Just the corn-fed boy, hardworking boy from Iowa. Not the kind of the guns or the person that's just running through the motion and not I don't know.
That's great. Right on. Shall we move on to the big course?
This is a triumph with Bob and David. Of course, David Cross and Bob Odenkirk's revival of sketch comedy that is not called Mr. Show because they couldn't get that name. But they definitely have fun with that idea in here. And all I'll say to kick us off here, Brian and Jackie, is I decided to watch this after I saw everyone talking about it, and I was like, I'm running behind. It's Sunday morning, and Sunday mornings usually been my shield time. So I'm like, well, I'll watch one of these 22-minute episodes at least. They're short. And I was just so sucked in, like I just kept watching them. I got up and fed the dogs. I went and fed my neighbor's cats. I made breakfast, and I was just watching them. I watched them the whole time, and one just led to another, and they felt like Mr. Show. The form of them was not that different, and they touch upon some of that and their attempts to break out of that in the behind the scenes episode, but it was up to date and it was funny and it was well done.
Yeah, Jackie, what were your first impressions? I don't know anyone who loves Mr. Show as much as you do.
I thought it was brilliant. My very first impression of it was, wow, both David Cross and Bob Odenkirk really know how to do acting now, as opposed to Mr. Show. They have learned the trade. And I think it came through so well. Like some of my favorite sketches in this episode, or the series, or season, hopefully it's just a season, was The Salesman, where Bob is trying to sell books of the Quran. And he's just so likable, and I think they talk about that in the documentary, that they really get you to feel really bad for him, and this is not something that they really were able to do in the original series, but boy, just the level of like just really kind of caring about them in the sketches came through.
And well, likewise, being afraid of them when Better Roots has Bob Odenkirk is it almost breaks the joke when he's so good as the slave driver. I mean the helper driver that I mean it's like you're waiting for that tension relieving punchline because there's such real tension each time he talks to someone. I thought the best sketch of the whole bunch was the Brooks and Dunn knockoff. The
Baines and Dunphy.
Yes. Fantastic. You saw a lot more theming during these episodes than I think you saw during Mr. Show. Oftentimes, it would go from sketch to sketch, and there weren't necessarily... There was connective tissue that took you when one ended, the other one picked up, but it was sort of a random tour. This one, it was great because they would set stuff up at the beginning, and it would tie itself in a neat bow at the end, which is something you got in some of the last, like the fourth season of Mr. Show, when they did, the Lost episode that they recorded, and they threw a tape up, and they had like what looked like a random joke about a banana, and then in the future, when it, at the end, they watched the Lost tape, and then the apes go nuts for the banana. It was great. I thought the whole setup with the best mom in the planet with two equally good brothers was hilarious. Man, I too had intended just to savor them, just make them little bite-sized chunks. Ended up plowing through the whole thing, and I was really impressed with that documentary. Loved that at the end.
Yeah, we
Well,
talked about that some
actually-
on Cordkillers,
go ahead, sorry.
just how good that behind the scenes was. And if you are interested at all in the mechanics of writing and sketch comedy, you should absolutely watch it because I'm not saying that no one's ever showed this side of a writing room before, but it is a really well constructed view of it in relation to what they ended up putting out. To your point about the connective tissue, that seems to have been something that came rather late in the production process because they showed them talking about like, well, how do we make this different and break it from being compared to Mr. Show all the time? And you watch them come up with the idea naturally of saying, well, what if we took that idea that we have for opening this episode and just did something like that in each one of these episodes, and then we refer to it again at the end, so we have a little bit of a connective narrative. And you can see them like, is that a great idea? No, I think that is a good idea. And it's just brilliant to be able to watch.
And they also did that in between shows, too. I know that was something I didn't necessarily catch my first viewing, but my second viewing, as I was taking 20 pages of notes, I noticed that they were referencing things that they had brought up in previous episodes, and they also had several callbacks to the original Mr. Show. There was, the whole Netflix guy who was the head of comedy.
Played by Tom Kenny, the voice of SpongeBob, by the way.
They had an episode of Mr. Show when Senator Tinkerbell came in as trying to knock down the National Endowment for the Arts and was trying to get them to not do some sketch, or they put a collar on Dave's neck so he couldn't do comedy without Senator Tinkerbell watching. And it was kind of the same theme with the whole prophet, gosh, I had it down, the prophet of the Mahafit, or, whatever the...
the pickfit of the Profer Mahashinish or something.
Yes, right, exactly.
And that is the other thing that is not unexpected, but they did not shy away from confronting the most controversial portions of our society today.
Absolutely. Well, and keep in mind, especially, David Cross has made a living as a very acerbic stand-up comedian over the last 20 years, taking on those issues. And so they had much more finely nuanced points, and you could tell that they're just slaying it. There's also kind of a relaxed attitude as far as breaking the fourth wall in this that wasn't quite there in Mr. Show. There's so many little moments when like the pizza arrives and he walks over and he goes, "This is fake money, take all of it." And it's like, and it didn't break the routine
the flow,
yeah, exactly. Same thing when they after the most dangerous game thing in the hunters in the accounting box forever, and the guy's like, "Hey, we're gonna grab something. When are you out?" He's like, 29 years from now. And they're like, "Oh, okay." And so they follow him down the street, and that was my favorite thing, is to watch him down the street, and the chit chat they're having is, "Can you believe it took an hour to mic us? Well, I don't even have anything funny to say. Do you?" He's like, "No, they didn't write anything." And then they walk in, and it's like, it serves the structural purpose of taking us into the scene, but also just draws, it's like, hey, who cares what you say? It does not matter. And so they just draw attention, and it's doubly funny because having been in production, it takes an hour to mic you up for a 5-second scene like that.
And actually, that brings up another good point to transition from that, which they do very well in these shows, is that it also the one wonderful thing about it is that they had people who had been so influenced by the original show. They had the Birthday Boys. They had Mike Mitchell. Those were Mike Mitchell and Mike Hanford were the two guys walking down the street. They were from the Birthday Boys that Bob Odenkirk produced.
Oh, I didn't know
Tim
that.
and
That's
Eric
wonderful.
produced some. We also had Keegan from Key and Peele.
Key and Peele, yeah.
And I mean, so it was so nice to get those people involved in it that have been very much influenced.
Who was the
by
guy
original.
that did Shark Kitchen? Which, by the way, I think is my favorite sketch as far from a production
Scott
standpoint.
Ackerman.
Yeah, Scott Ackerman for
Ackerman.
Comedy
Comedy
Bang
Bang
Bang,
Bang.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
That's right. Yeah, boy, he nailed it, dude. He had reality show host down to a T. It was awesome, and seeing all the old faces, and I guess I do mean old. They're all 20 years older now, which is part of what made the Real Time Travel Machine sketch such a great opener, is because I sat and watched that with Justin, feeling like we were in a time machine, because we grew up at different times, but we both had the experience of watching Mr. Show around college, and we didn't even know each other back then, and yet we stepped into a time machine, and it's like we were back in college watching that stuff. It was great.
I think it's a masterful sketch comedy performance. If I were to come up with anything less than glowing to say, I don't even want to say it's a criticism. It's that this follows the path that Monty Python's Flying Circus laid down as far as links and breaking character when it's necessary, but in the best way. Not in a way that's like, oh, that's just derivative. It's like, oh no, they're executing those same tricks today perfectly. And that's why I'm so psyched about that behind the scenes show, is like there's one part in the behind the scenes where you hear Bob Odenkirk practicing his newscaster piece about the fifth Beatle that no one ever knew about, which, by the way, hilarious. Absolutely adored that too. And he says, like, the family said memorials could be made to blah, blah, blah. And it's like, I don't remember how awkward that sounded. And then the next thing is Bob Odenkirk going, I think we strike this line because that just feels a little awkward. And then we just go straight from this into this. And they're kicking it around and talking it and saying, yeah, okay, so we're just dropping that line, great. And then you see the actual one from the episode. I'm like, oh, that's why it didn't feel like it was awkward when I saw it, because they took that one awkward piece out. Like, their sensibilities for that are so finely honed. It's impressive.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you what, nothing but I'll give it my lowest rating ever. 10 thumbs up. It was great.
All the thumbs up. How about you, Jackie? Anything else?
My final thoughts are for those that think, well, this is not like the original show, but it's okay. It's good to see him around. Is that they're only 4 episodes. You're comparing this with something that was much grander. When you think about they didn't have enough transitions, or they didn't have enough inside jokes, and they don't have that much time here with 4 episodes. So I say rewatch them, because I think that anybody who watched the original series, they watched them, rewatched them, maybe because they were sitting on their couch high in college.
they forgot it the first time.
Exactly. But I mean, I just say, once you go through it again and you pick up the details, you look at the posters, you look at it, every little that's what I love about Mr. Show, is all of sort of the Easter eggs and that stuff that you pick up on.
I had dropped out of graduate school and was shooting a cable access show in Austin when Mr. Show was out. So I did watch a lot of it on a couch on a VCR. So I think that's what I'll do, Jackie. I'm going to dub these down to VHS. And
get the full experience. One last note. High fives to Syriac for the amazing title sequence, where it's like the third episode or second episode. I realized, oh wait, every single thing in here is from the show, and it got me a lot more excited as I was trying to predict. Like, I wonder what this guy is and who's that, and so on.
Yeah, that was fun. Where you're like, oh, that's like, especially the ski. Where I'm like, when are we going to see the skier? And then we see a black and white thing. I'm like, oh, that's the skier, but we actually get to see him in color in the opening sequence. That's cool.
He got back to me on Twitter because I posted that it's also interesting to go back and watch the series again with the audio descriptions, and then listening to the Netflix audio description person try to explain that opening
Oh,
the
that's
intro.
great. I'm going to do that immediately.
That's
And he
fantastic.
responded to me and
Absolutely.
said,
I'm gonna do
now
that
I'm
too.
intrigued.
Oh, that's great. Well, very, very good. Kudos to all those gentlemen for kicking all the asses again. You want to wrap things up talking about the first season of Rebels, Tom?
Yeah, so Brian has gotten into Star Wars Rebels. He started season 2, so he knows a little bit about that first episode, but mostly you've completed all of season 1. So we're only going to talk about season 1 here. And it's interesting because I watched it from premiere, special edition movie length premiere, and then waited for the first episode and watched them every week last year. You got to binge on them, which I'm kind of jealous of, to be honest.
I'll tell you what, man, it stands up a lot better. And you know, full disclosure, I watched it in kiddo vision. When you're sitting there with your 12-year-old daughter who's getting into Star Wars, it's hard to not have everything get a boost automatically. The first season, and you know, let's be real fair. The first 5 episodes, it's very much a kid show. Very much a kid show. And again, it never stops being a kid show, but you start to get into the groove of it, and you start to see that, like, yeah, it's a kid show. It's also a Star Wars show, and it's in the world, and it feels like the world. And some of the set pieces are really exciting. You know, that journey where it just does a full episode of, it's just straight up pitch black. It's the movie Pitch Black in the Star Wars universe on some asteroid or whatever. I loved it. I also am surprised at how much of a family everything starts to feel like. They start to get real cozy, and I think Chopper's the best new droid we've seen. Probably BB-8's got a tough one to crack if he's going to take on Chopper. And Zeb is my favorite furry tall guy. Sorry, Chewbacca. I'm digging it a lot, and I liked the ending of the Inquisitor. It seemed like a good way to kill a bad guy in a way that felt like it had teeth on a kid's show. You know, because obviously you got. Although I do feel like that end battle when he was, you know, after. Why can I not remember main characters' names? After Ezra appeared to die, and then our Jedi, you know, just he's like, oh, you done it now? He's like, why? Because you're mad? He's like, no, because now I have nothing to be afraid of. And it just goes full masterful, you know, light side Jedi. I love the integration of the gun to as a distance weapon combined with double lightsabers. That was a pretty cool set piece. And if we get 1 or 2 of those a year, that's great. Loved the fact that all of the obvious winks and high fives, and this is part of the Star Wars universe, don't forget, were all saved for the last 3 minutes of the last episode. Like, at the end, it's like, oh, by the way, characters from the Clone Wars, Bail Organa, also Darth Vader, we're out. And it's like, and I'm like, thank you for not pulling all this small universe nonsense. And it looks like they're, again, only making it bigger with characters in the beginning of the second season that I saw.
Yeah, what's really fun about it to me, especially remembering back to watching that first season, was I did feel like I was getting enough of the wider universe that I wasn't starving or feeling like, they're faking it, because I got the TIE fighter sounds. I saw Star Destroyers. The Empire people are dressed in the New Hope era uniforms. Lothal is close enough to Tatooine that I even can get some sensibility from that. But I liked that they saved pieces. Like, they give you Tarkin a little early, so you're like, oh, okay, that's Tarkin. But then that's not as big of a deal because you're not actually getting Peter Cushing. And then you save your big guns for, like, no, this is definitely part of the universe, to throw on you at the end. And not to be spoilery, but I think the cool thing about season 2 is they seem to be willing to keep doling out some of prior universe a little more in season 2. Not so much that, again, you're blowing all of your fun stuff right at the beginning, but you're not like, oh, now we're back to pretending like none of that existed. They don't make that mistake. So it really does feel like you're in the Star Wars universe, and taking the best of, and I know some of you won't believe that even exists, but the best of the prequels and the best of the original trilogy, and taking the pieces of them that are good and saying, all right, let's play with those together, because we're in this crossover time period.
Yeah, I will say also, some folks in the chat are saying all the Clone Wars stuff is going to go over my head. I'm sure some of it will, but a lot of it you pick up just by osmosis. Like, I knew it was a big deal when, what's her name, Ahsoka showed up. and I knew it was I recognized even the cartoon version of Bail Organa. I liked the fact that it appeared as though at the end of season 1 that it's like, okay, the rules are different. This has been about the genesis of Rebels. Now we are a Rebel alliance, and we need to establish a base, and we need to get somewhere in it. And so the rules are changing, which I think can only make it feel like a bigger, more epic story as it goes forward.
Yeah, I don't think it is required for you to understand what's going on at all to have seen Clone Wars. To you, Ahsoka Tano would just be this legendary person who's important in the rebellion, and you finally get to meet her at the end of this season. If it's an extra special jolt if you watched all of the Clone Wars and you saw her grow up and know her backstory, but it doesn't confuse you.
It was, although I will say, it was really cool to watch Penny's jaw drop and to hear her gasp as she recognized the character. I mean, that's
and all grown up, right?
Yeah,
like that's an adult Ahsoka Tano.
Yeah, and that's the thing is I remember like wasn't it like a kid before? Yeah. So anyway, I'm enjoying it. I'll plow forward, I'm sure, and get caught up. And
what about Sabine? You didn't mention Sabine. I think she's my favorite.
Oh, she is the best. She's the best character in the entire show,
and she's an actual Mandalorian.
Oh, is she?
Boba Fett wears Mandalorian armor, but is not actually Mandalorian.
I didn't know. I thought the Mandalorians were dead or something. That's why it was red armor.
Well, Sabine's not.
Okay.
I don't know if what happened to the rest of the planet.
And it's so funny because Penny is such a girl. She's like, oh, Sabine has different hair this season. It's turquoise now instead of pink and red.
And I like the idea that they made her an artist too. So it's like she is the warrior artist. That's just cool to me. Like she's actually the only armored member of the team.
Well, and I love
also has this cool like graffiti art, like rebel art sort of side. It's really awesome.
I love the fact that that they were able to create a plausible reason why they would go in a cartoonish spray painted TIE fighter. It's like, look, man, we need a TIE fighter. It's go time. It's like by the time we're there, it won't matter. And let's go. And I don't know. It seemed very punk rock. I dug it.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, that is it for Spoilerin time. Jackie Hearn, thank you for hanging out with us today and sharing your wisdom about Mr. Show history and everything. That was awesome.
I wanted to come in with a corncob pipe and like a big, sweater, thick sweater, but not enough time.
Well, regardless, where can we hear more of your lovely voice?
Oh, you can find everything just by following me at Jackie Hearn 81 on Twitter, but you probably don't want to do that.
Oh, you definitely want to do that. Go Jackie Hearn, JACKIEHERN 81 on Twitter. Do it now. We'll spoil it next week.
Yeah.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.